Mom, how would you look with zero balance? That was my son, laughing. I was standing in the hallway, frozen, having forgotten my phone. He was on speaker, bragging to his wife about how he'd just erased my entire retirement. They thought I was a naive, 58-year-old widow. They thought it was their advance inheritance. They underestimated the accountant I used to be. My name is Lorraine Hayes. I'm 58 years old. I live in a clean, quiet suburb of Seattle, where the lawns are all cut to the same length. That afternoon, the house was empty when I pulled into the driveway. I'd only made it 2 blocks toward the market before my hand, patting the passenger seat, realized my phone was missing. A minor annoyance. I let myself in through the garage, into the silence of the mudroom, and stopped. The silence was broken. I heard voices from the living room. My son, Dylan. I smiled, thinking he'd stopped by to surprise me. Then I heard my daughter-in-law, Jenna, let out a sharp, giddy laugh. They hadn't heard the garage door. He must have been on speakerphone. I was about to call out, just grabbing my phone, when his voice, loud and proud, sliced through the air. Mom, how would you look with zero balance? He said it to her, about me. Another peal of laughter, this time from them both. You actually did it? Jenna asked, her voice high-pitched. Every last cent, Dylan boomed. The pride in his voice was an ugly, bragging thing. Just wiped her main online retirement account. She won't even know how to check it. Cleaned her out. My name is Lorraine Hayes. But in that second, I ceased to exist. The air in the hallway turned thick and heavy. I couldn't breathe. It felt as if a heavy stone had been dropped onto my chest, and a ringing, like a distant alarm, started in my ears. I wanted to storm into the room, to demand, "What are you talking about?" I also wanted to turn and run, to pretend I had misheard, that this was some bizarre, cruel joke. But I was an accountant. I know numbers. I know theft. The durable power of attorney she signed. Dylan was explaining, clearly thrilled with his own brilliance. It gave me full online access. I just transferred the whole North Cascade investment portfolio. My portfolio. The big one. That Florida vacation house is ours. Jenna, he crowed. And I'm ordering the new Tesla. It's just, call it an advance inheritance. Inheritance? The word suggested I was already dead to him. I stumbled back a step, my hand flying out, slapping the wall until it found the oak banister of the staircase. I gripped it, my knuckles cracking, my knees threatening to give way. All those years. All those late nights at Ridgeline Construct, staring at spreadsheets until my eyes burned. I was a good accountant. A meticulous, careful accountant. I'd only retired early because the arthritis in my hands had become a constant, burning agony. After my husband, Mark, died from the cancer, I had managed everything. I sold the big, empty house that echoed with his absence. I methodically consolidated our assets, moving everything into those retirement funds, planning every single dollar to last me another 30 or 40 years. And Dylan, my Dylan, he had helped me. He was the one who insisted I move everything online. It's easier to manage, Mum. It's safer this way. I could see it all now. A sickening, rapid-fire montage, the months of planning, the casual questions about passwords, the way they preyed on my frustration with technology, on my aging hands. I remembered that Saturday, maybe 6 months ago. Mum? Just let me set up all your online accounts, he'd said, his hand on my shoulder, his voice so patient. It's too complicated for you. I'll link it all. When you need to, you just hit approve on your phone. See simple. I had hit approve. I had trusted him. Their laughter echoed from the living room again, casual and light, as if they were discussing a movie. I couldn't go in. I couldn't face them. Not like this. Not while my world was tilting and my hands were shaking so badly I could barely keep my grip on the railing. Very slowly, very quietly, I backed away. I slipped out the garage door, my phone still sitting on the kitchen counter, forgotten again. I got into my car. My heart wasn't just broken, it felt like it had been expertly filleted. The shock was a cold, vibrating hum in my bones. But underneath that shock, something else was forming. A tiny, hard particle of ice. My son had just declared war. He saw me as a target, a gullible old woman. Fine. I would stop seeing him as my son. I sat in the driveway, the engine silent, gripping the cheap plastic of the car's emergency iPad. I couldn't go back into the house for my phone. My own home was no longer safe. My hands were shaking so badly it took 3 attempts to type in the passcode. I pulled up the North Cascade Bank app, my heart hammering against my ribs, praying I had misunderstood. The app loaded. My accounts. My main IRA. The one I had built for 30 years. The balance was displayed in bold, black digits, 0.0. $0, 0 cents. It wasn't just a number. It was a negation of my entire adult life. I tapped the transaction history, my accountant's brain trying to function through the thick fog of betrayal. There it was. One single, catastrophic transfer. $420,000, my 401k rollover from Ridgeline, gone. The destination was a name I had never seen before, Aurora Vista Holdings, LLC. The ringing in my ears intensified. How could I have been so blind? The signs were all there, flashing like neon warnings that I, in my trusting stupidity, had dismissed as shadows. Dylan constantly asking for my email passwords. Just to clean up your spam filter. Mom, it's a mess in there. I'm just helping. Jenna, at our last Sunday dinner, sipping my wine and joking. Old money should move faster. Shouldn't it? I had laughed, assuming she meant the stock market. She had meant my money. My mind snapped back to Christmas Eve, just last year. The house smelled of pine and roast beef. Dylan had slid his tablet across the table to me, right in the middle of dessert, his voice so casual. Mum, real quick, just need you to e-sign this. It's just a harmless bank paper, updating the system so I can help you manage things better. He had smiled that smile, the one that used to make my heart melt. I was tired. My hands ached from the arthritis, and I was happy to have my family surrounding me. I trusted him. I scrawled my signature with the stylus, not reading the dense paragraphs of fine print. It must have been the durable power of attorney. Not just access, but expanded access. The right to take loans against my portfolio. The right to liquidate. I slammed my fist on the dashboard. The plastic rattled, and a sharp pain shot up my arm. But it was nothing compared to the violation I felt. I was an idiot, a foolish, trusting, old woman. The insult burned hotter than the grief. He hadn't just stolen from me, he had played me. He and his wife had sat at my table, eaten my food, and smiled in my face while planning this entire demolition. The shame was a physical weight, but as I sat there in the silent car, it began to curdle. It hardened into a cold, dense rage. Anger at Dylan, anger at Jenna, anger at myself, and a deep, profound anger at a world that looks at a widow in her late 50s and sees only a target. I gripped the iPad. My fingers were still shaking, but now with adrenaline, not just shock. I called Carmen Alvarez, my neighbor, my best friend for 20 years. She's 60, a retired ER nurse, and she doesn't tolerate nonsense from anyone. She picked up on the second ring. "Lorraine, you sound terrible. What's wrong?" I tried to speak, but what came out was a sob, a dry, racking sound that tore through my chest. "He took it," I whispered, the words finally breaking free. "Carmen, he took everything." I told her. The laughter, the zero balance, the Florida house, the Tesla. I cried. The ugly, humiliated tears of a fool, right there in my driveway. Carmen listened. She didn't offer empty comforts. She didn't say, "Oh, it must be a mistake." She let me finish, and then there was a sharp silence. "Okay," she said, her voice shifting instantly from friend to charge nurse. "Listen to me, Lorraine. Do exactly as I say. Right now. Go into your settings. Stop sharing your location with your family. Now." I fumbled. My vision blurred, but I did it. "Good. Now. Open that bank app again. Take screenshots of the $0 balance. Take screenshots of the transfer to that LLC. Email them to me and to yourself. We need a record." "Got it." "Yes," I said, my voice shaky but my hands steadying. "Write down the exact time you heard that phone call. We need a perfect timeline. He's going to try to delete the transfer history. Lorraine, he thinks you're senile, but you're an accountant. This is financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I used to see brochures for it at the hospital all the time." We talked for a few more minutes, her practical, angry words acting like a scaffold, holding me up. When I hung up, the tears were gone. The shock was still there, a cold sickness in my stomach, but the paralyzing despair was evaporating. I looked up, catching my reflection in the rearview mirror. My face was pale, blotchy from crying, and I looked older than I had an hour ago. But my eyes weren't the soft, trusting eyes of a doting mother. They were cold. They were sharp. They were calculating. "All right. Dylan," I whispered to the reflection, the voice not quite sounding like my own. "You want to play money games with me?" I didn't sleep. The night was a long, cold blur of staring at the ceiling. The digits 0.00 burned into my vision. At 9 a.m. sharp, I walked into the downtown Seattle branch of North Cascade Bank. I wasn't dressed like a grieving mother. I wore the grey wool pantsuit I used to reserve for end-of-quarter audits at Ridgeline Construct. I bypassed the tellers and informed the concierge that I needed to see the branch manager, Thomas Breen, regarding a catastrophic, unauthorized transfer. They put me in a small, glass-walled conference room that smelled of stale coffee and industrial carpet cleaner. Breen was a man in his 40s with a weak chin and an expensive tie, and he looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Mrs. Hayes," he began, clasping his hands on the polished table. "I've reviewed the preliminary file. While the amount is significant, I must inform you that as far as the bank's system is concerned, all transactions were authorized." I just stared at him. "The durable power of attorney we have on file for Dylan Hayes is comprehensive," he continued, shuffling papers. "Furthermore, The wire transfer was authorized using the two-factor security token sent directly to your registered mobile phone. The approve button, the one Dylan had told me to press. I let the silence sit in the room until Breen started to fidget with his tie. "Mr. Breen?" I said, my voice low and flat, devoid of the tears I'd shed last night. I was an accountant for 35 years. I am not here to debate your authorization protocols. I am here for my records. I require a complete, printed history of every single transaction linked to my social security number for the past 12 months. Every wire transfer, every margin loan, and any new credit facilities or loans opened in my name. The shift in his posture was immediate. He had been prepared for a crying old woman. He was not prepared for an auditor. He huffed, annoyed, but turned to his terminal. The desktop printer in the corner whirred to life, spitting out pages. He gathered them, stapled the corner, and slid the stack across the table. I read them. My mind, thank God, was still sharp. The accountant's brain took over, pushing the broken-hearted mother into a back room. There it was, the $420,000 transfer to Aurora Vista Holdings, LLC. But there was something else, something worse. My finger stopped on a line item dated December 31st, New Year's Eve. Portfolio loan margin. A withdrawal. $150,000. My blood turned to ice. That harmless bank paper he'd had me e-sign at Christmas dinner, while Jenna was clearing the plates. "This," I said, tapping the paper. "This loan. I never saw this money. I never authorized this." "It was e-signed," Breen said weakly, checking his screen. "Using the power of attorney? The funds were transferred out the same day." "To where?" "The same LLC, Aurora Vista Holdings." "And who?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "Is Aurora Vista Holdings?" Breen visibly hesitated, liability flashing in his eyes. "Mrs. Hayes. That's third-party client information. I really can't." "Mr. Breen," I cut him off. "That third party was funded entirely with my assets, which you allowed to be transferred this morning. Who owns it?" He sighed, defeated and wanting me out of his office. He typed, clicked, and then frowned, looking closer at his screen. "Well, the official representative listed on the Articles of Incorporation is Dylan Hayes." He looked up at me, as if that solved it. "And the beneficial owner," I pressed. "Who is the owner?" He read the screen again, his eyes widening slightly. "The beneficial owner is listed as a Jennabeth Cole." Jennabeth. Jenna. The air left my lungs. It wasn't just Dylan. He wasn't the mastermind. He was the tool. Jenna was the architect. For a wild second, I wanted to sweep everything off the table. I wanted to scream. Instead, I took a deep, shuddering breath and straightened the stack of papers, tapping them into a perfect, neat pile. "Mr. Breen," I said, my voice shaking just once. "I need you to open an internal investigation, immediately. I am formally alleging financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. I am citing my age and the clear, fraudulent conflict of interest in the transfer of my entire retirement portfolio to a shell company owned by my son's wife. I want that noted in my file, and I want a freeze placed on any further activity." Breen paled. Financial exploitation was a legal trigger word. It meant regulators. It meant liability for North Cascade. He started to stammer about policies. "This is not a policy dispute," I said, the ice returning. "This is a crime, and you are now a material witness." His demeanor changed completely. He quickly printed another document. It was a glossy brochure, Protect Yourself from Elder Financial Abuse. He flipped it over and scribbled a phone number on the back. "This is the direct hotline for the State Financial Crimes Unit," he said, his voice now hushed. I strongly advise you to consult an attorney, someone specializing in elder law." I took the papers and walked out of the bank into the bright, indifferent Seattle morning. The realization hit me harder than the theft itself. I wasn't just robbed. I was in debt. Dylan and Jenna hadn't just taken my future. They had mortgaged it. That $150,000 loan was in my name. If the market dipped, the bank would come for my house. I stood on the concrete, taxis blurring past. The shame was suffocating. But that new, cold, hard particle in my chest was now a solid block of steel. This wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was a balance sheet, and I was going to make it balance. If I had to carry the stain of being the mother duped by her son, I would use that stain to drag them both so far down they would forget the color of the sky. That evening, my kitchen became a war room. Carmen sat at my table, her laptop open, while I sat beside her with mine. We weren't making dinner. We were digging. We scrolled back through years of my sent items and inbox, searching for the first mention of help from Dylan. "Here," Carmen said, pointing to her screen. 18 months ago. Subject line, helping you get organized. Mum. This is when he sent you the link to that easy-to-use password manager. He said it was so I wouldn't forget my passwords, I murmured, staring at the cheerful email. He said he would keep a copy, just in case. He kept a copy, all right, Carmen muttered. "Okay, Lorraine, your phone. Give it to me." I handed it over. She navigated through menus I didn't even know existed, downloading a small, discreet app. "It's a voice recorder," she explained, her fingers tapping. "I've set it to automatically begin recording any incoming call from Dylan or Jenna, and you can activate it manually. Just tap this icon. It looks like a calendar." I nodded, my throat tight. "What now?" "Now," she said, closing the laptop. "You become the sweet, confused mother they think you are, and you invite your son and his lovely wife over for dinner. You tell them you miss them." The idea of making them meatloaf while my life was in ruins was repulsive. But Carmen was right. I needed more than just a bank statement. I needed their arrogance, in their own voices. I called him. My hand was steady, my voice intentionally pitched a little higher, a little weaker. "Dylan. Honey, I haven't seen you all week. I was thinking of making your favorite pot roast tomorrow night. Could you and Jenna come over? I miss you both." The bait was set. He agreed, his voice dripping with the false, patient affection he reserved for me now. "Of course. Mum. We'd love to." The next night was the longest of my life. I tapped the calendar icon on my phone and slid it into my apron pocket, the microphone facing out. I served them roast beef and mashed potatoes, my hands performing the familiar, motherly actions while my insides twisted. They were giddy. Jenna, especially, was practically vibrating in her chair. "We found the most amazing opportunity," she gushed, twirling wine in her glass. "A real estate investment down in Miami. It's just perfect." "Oh," I said, feigning mild interest. "That sounds expensive." Jenna shot Dylan a look, a tiny, conspiratorial smile playing on her lips. She leaned forward. Well, that's the thing. With the money you just freed up, we could probably put the deposit down right away, couldn't we? Honey, the money you freed up. The audacity stole my breath for a second. Dylan gave a slight cough, but the damage was done. I let the conversation drift for a while. Then, as I was clearing the plates, I put my hand to my lower back and gave a convincing wince. Oh, this old back. I sighed. Dylan, honey, before you go, could you look at my phone? My bank app has been acting funny. I'm so worried these days about hackers. Could you just check on it for me? I handed him my phone, the phone that was recording his every word. He and Jenna shared another look, this one a mix of pity and amusement. She's so clueless. Sure. Mum, he said, taking it. I watched his face. He was confident. He was in control. He unlocked it, and, just as I'd expected, his fingers flew, not to the bank app's balance, but to the phone's settings. I saw him swipe. He was disabling the email notifications from North Cascade. He was turning off the push alerts. He was cleaning up his tracks, right in front of me. He handed the phone back with a patronizing pat on my hand. Everything looks just fine. Mum, no hackers. He smiled, that bright, false smile. See, even if you had zero balance, you'd still have me. Jenna let out a high-pitched titter of a laugh. The audio file would be perfect. I looked at my son. The little boy who used to cry "Mommy" after a skinned knee was gone. In his place was a greedy, confident man who had just confirmed, out loud, that my financial ruin was a joke to him. A man who was certain he would never, ever get caught. After they left, drunk on my food and their own success. Carmen came over. We plugged the phone into a speaker and listened. When we got to Dylan's zero balance line and Jenna's laugh, Carmen just shook her head. That's cold, Lorraine. Ice cold. Is it enough? I asked. It's not enough to put them in prison, she said, ever the realist. Not yet. But it's more than enough to shove in a lawyer's face. It's proof of intent. It proves they knew you were unaware. Now, we need to know where the money went. She made a call. My nephew, Leo, he's 27, works in cybersecurity for one of those big tech firms. He can read the internet, let's say. He owes me for that time I stitched him up after a biking accident. Leo came over an hour later, all nervous energy and a laptop covered in stickers. He was polite, called me Mrs. Hayes, and looked uncomfortable until Carmen said, Leo, they stole all her money. Find it. He sat at my kitchen table, and his fingers moved over the keyboard faster than I could track. He pulled up public records, state incorporation filings, and digital registries I'd never heard of. He typed in Aurora Vista Holdings, LLC. For almost 2 hours, the only sound was the clicking of his keys. Okay, he said finally, pointing. This is dirty. Aurora Vista is just a shell. It's a Series LLC, designed to be confusing. The day the money came in from your account, that 420,000. It sat there for about 90 minutes. Then it was moved. Moved where, I said, leaning in. Leo showed me a transaction. Into a corporate brokerage account at a place called Brightwave Capital. It's one of those high-risk, high-return tech investment firms. He paused, then looked up at me. Mrs. Hayes. Is your son's name Dylan? Yes. Why? Because, Leo said, clicking one more time. According to their own website, Dylan Hayes is listed as a part-time financial consultant for Brightwave Capital. Monica Green's law office was small, cluttered with file boxes, and smelled of old paper and strong coffee. She was a woman in her 60s, with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense tweed blazer. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. I laid out my evidence on her desk, the North Cascade bank statements, Leo's printout on Aurora Vista Holdings and Brightwave Capital, and my phone, queued up with the audio file. I played the recording. First, Dylan's zero balance line. Then, the dinner party. I watched Monica's face. She didn't react, just listened intently. When Jenna's laugh about the Miami deposit played, Monica's eyes flickered with a brief, cold anger. When it was over, she hit stop and looked at me. Mrs. Hayes, your son, Mr. Hayes, and Ms. Cole have not just been unethical, they have been stupid. She explained it in terms I understood. The durable power of attorney gave Dylan a fiduciary duty. That's a legal standard. It means he was obligated to act in your best interest, not his. The moment he transferred your $420,000 into a shell company owned by his wife, he committed a textbook case of fiduciary abuse and embezzlement. The $150,000 loan he took in your name is financial fraud. The state of Washington, she said, a small, grim smile appearing, takes this very, very seriously. She leaned forward. So, we are going to do 3 things simultaneously. First, we file a formal, detailed complaint with the State Department of Financial Institutions, referencing Mr. Breen at North Cascade. Second, we take your evidence to the state's Adult Protective Services and their Elder Abuse Investigative Unit. Third, I draft a cease and desist letter to Dylan, Jenna, and the registered agent for Aurora Vista Holdings, informing them they are under investigation and must not access, move, or dispose of any assets. Won't that tip them off? I asked. It doesn't matter, Monica said. Leo already proved the money moved to Brightwave. The cease and desist just puts them on a legal footing they can't wiggle out of. It scares them, and scared people make mistakes. The next meeting was with her and Eric Donovan, a senior investigator from the state's Financial Crimes Unit. He was a tall, tired-looking man who seemed unimpressed by everything, until I mentioned Brightwave Capital. Brightwave, he repeated, suddenly sitting up straight. You're sure? My nephew traced the money directly to a brokerage account there. My son is listed as a consultant on their website, I said. Eric exchanged a look with Monica. He turned to his own laptop. Mrs. Hayes, Brightwave Capital has been on our watch list for about 6 months. We've had a number of complaints. They specialize in high-risk, unregulated investment products, and their client list seems to be heavily skewed toward retirees. He tapped a few keys. Ah, here we go? He turned the screen so I could see it, though he covered most of the page with a folder. It was an internal report. We have an open file on them regarding complaints from several elderly investors who were convinced to pour their savings into junk crypto coins. They lost everything. He moved the folder just enough. And what do you know? One of the consultants named in those complaints was Dylan Hayes. The air in the room felt thin. This wasn't just a spontaneous act of greed against his mother. This was his business model. We got to work. That afternoon, on Monica's advice, I signed a legal revocation of all powers of attorney previously granted to Dylan. I then signed a new, limited and temporary agreement appointing Silver Harbor Trust, a neutral, bonded trust company Monica recommended, as the temporary supervisor of my accounts. They would be my shield. Monica then helped me with one last document, a formal update to my last will and testament. The new codicil was simple in light of the ongoing legal investigation. My son, Dylan Hayes, was to be explicitly disinherited, pending a full judicial review and reversal of the findings. The advance inheritance he was so proud of had just cost him the real one. I walked out of Monica's office feeling different. The victim, the weeping mother, was gone. The question in my head was no longer, why did my son do this to me? It was now, what is the most painful, most complete way to make them pay? I wasn't just defending myself. I was attacking before I left. Monica tapped her pen on her legal pad. "Lorraine," she said, using my first name. "They're arrogant. Dylan, especially. He thinks he's smarter than you. That's a weapon we can use." "What do you mean?" "They've already been caught. But they don't know it yet. What if you found another lost account, a substantial one? What if you, in your confusion, asked your loving son for help one last time?" A new kind of coldness, a strategic chill, settled over me. "A sting operation," I said. "A legally supervised, court-authorized one." Monica corrected me, her eyes glinting. "Let's see if lightning strikes the same place twice." I let a few days pass, long enough for the cease and desist letter to not arrive, long enough for them to feel safe. Then, on a Tuesday morning, I made the call. I pitched my voice high, adding a quaver of confused frustration. "Dylan? Honey, I am so turned around." I started, the recording app on my phone quietly active. I was cleaning out the garage, Mark's old file cabinets, and I found this paperwork. It looks like an old IRA I forgot I even had. It says, "Summit Front Retirement." I let him interrupt me. "An IRA, Mom. What are you talking about?" "Well, I don't know, dear. That's why I'm calling you. It looks like, well, the statement is old, but if I'm reading this right, it says there's almost $500,000 in it. Can that be right? I never rolled it over." There was a sharp, dead silence on his end. I could hear the calculations whirring in his head. I could practically hear the word Tesla flashing in his mind. He was still stressed. I knew. About the Miami deposit. Jenna would be applying pressure. And here I was, dangling $500,000 in front of him. "Mom," he said, his voice changing, becoming sharp and intensely focused. "Do not do anything with those papers. Don't call anyone. Where are they?" "They're right here, on the kitchen table." "Okay. Good. Take a picture of the main page and text it to me. I'll look into it for you. This could be complicated. We need to be careful." "Oh, thank you. Honey?" I cooed. I knew you'd know what to do. Following Monica and Eric's precise instructions, I didn't text him. I scanned and emailed him the papers, a beautiful 2-page PDF forged by Eric's forensic team, complete with a convincing Summit Front Retirement logo, a fake account number, and a customer service portal login www.summitfrontretire.com. It was a dummy website, a digital flytrap controlled entirely by the state. The hook was in his mouth. He was pulling the line. The subsequent calls, all recorded, were a masterclass in greed. I'd listen in on speaker, with Carmen sitting beside me, shaking her head. Dylan and Jenna, thinking they were on a private call. discussed their next move. "It's just sitting there," Dylan said, his voice giddy. "500,000. She didn't even know." "Okay, slow down." Jenna's voice, sharp and practical. "We do the same thing. We help her consolidate it. We move it to Aurora Vista for safety, if she ever finds out, which she won't. We just say we're investing it for her." But it was what I heard later that truly turned my stomach. Leo, at Carmen's request, had found a vulnerability in the smart speaker Dylan had bought me for my birthday. "To keep you company, Mum." It was now a listening device. One afternoon, I heard them arguing in their own home. "This is getting risky." "Dylan?" Jenna said, her voice hard, all the charm gone. "It's fine. It's my mother. She trusts me completely." "Just know," Jenna replied, her voice dropping to a cold, flat monotone. "If this ever goes sideways, I'm walking. And the story will be that you couldn't handle the pressure, that you've been manipulated by your needy mother your entire life, and I just got caught in the crossfire. You will be the one holding the bag." He didn't even argue. He just placated her. Eric's team was in heaven. They watched the digital traffic. Dylan's IP address, Jenna's IP address. They even tracked an IP from a computer inside Brightwave Capital, all trying to log in, all trying to crack the security of the Summit Front portal. I played my part to perfection. I was the doddery, grateful mother. I sent text messages. "Honey, did you get the email I sent? I'm so confused." And later, "Were you able to log in? Should I call them?" And finally, "Oh, this is all too much for me. Should I sign something to let you handle it?" His reply came via email. "It's all good. Mum, I'm handling it. Just need you to sign one more document. It's just like the last one. Just a simple power of attorney to let me transfer the funds safely." The email attachment was a new set of IRA transfer forms. His message, typed at the bottom, was a personal, digital age twist of the knife. "Just trust me like you always do. Mum?" I stared at that sentence until the words blurred. The nausea rose in my throat, hot and acidic. The sheer, unmitigated arrogance, the casual cruelty, dressed up as love. "He sent the forms," I told Monica over the phone. "Excellent," she replied. "My courier is on his way. He'll have the version you need to sign." 10 minutes later, I signed the real papers. They looked identical to Dylan's. Every line, every box. But Monica's version contained an additional clause, buried in the legal boilerplate, explicitly stating that this transaction was being performed under the direct supervision of state financial regulators as part of a controlled test. It was a legal bear trap, camouflaged with my own name. The day of the transfer was surreal. I sat in my own kitchen, which Eric Donovan and a quiet technician had turned into a command post. A secure line was open, patched into the audio feed from the sting operation. Eric sat across from me, a laptop open, his expression grim. "They're in the co-working space," he murmured, adjusting his earpiece. "Jenna and Dylan, they booked a private conference room. The advisor, our agent, is initiating the video call now." A second later, I heard it. A crisp, professional voice. "Mr. Hayes, this is David from Summit Front Retirement. Can you hear me?" And then, my son's voice, full of that oily, confident charm he used for strangers. "Loud and clear. David, thanks for setting this up. My mother, Lorraine, is a little old-fashioned, so I'm handling this for her." "Of course," the agent said. I have the transfer forms you submitted. I just need to verify some information for security. I listened, my stomach churning, as Dylan confidently recited my social security number, my date of birth, and my mother's maiden name. He spoke as if he were ordering a pizza, rattling off the keys to my identity. Excellent, the agent said. Now, for the final verification. I just need a direct confirmation from the account holder. Is Mrs. Lorraine Hayes available to speak with me? There was a pause, a beat of dead, heavy air. I heard a faint rustle. Perhaps him looking at Jenna. Ah, no, Dylan said, his voice smooth, practiced. She's actually just down for her afternoon nap. She gets overwhelmed. But I have the full durable power of attorney right here. I sent you the copy. I am authorized to act as her, in her full capacity. He had done it. He had lied. He had erased me, declared me incompetent, all for a bank transfer. Eric caught my eye and gave a single, sharp nod. That was the final nail. Very well, the agent said. I see the authorization. Please proceed to the final transfer screen. Once you hit confirm, the funds will move from Summit Front to the designated LLC account. I heard clicking keys. Okay, Dylan said, his voice tight with anticipation. I'm on the screen. I am hitting confirm. Now. Eric spoke into his own mic. Execute. I heard a sudden, muffled thump through the audio feed. Dylan's voice. What the hell? Then, a new set of voices, loud, commanding. FBI, hands in the air, now. I heard a shriek. It must have been Jenna. Then Dylan, his voice cracking, high-pitched. What? I'm on a call, I'm helping my mother. On the ground. The new voice boomed. I let out a breath I felt I'd been holding for a week. I looked at Eric. He was already listening to another channel, his face set. We have Hayes, he said. Then he frowned. Wait. He listened, his brow furrowing. Damn it. What? I asked, my blood running cold. What's wrong? Ms. Cole, he said, turning to me, his face granite. She was sitting near the emergency exit. The moment the team breached the main door, she was gone. Slipped out the side. He tapped his laptop. She must have had a go bag. And she had this, a small hardware wallet for cryptocurrency. Dylan didn't even know she had it. She's in the wind. The victory, so clean and total just a second before, collapsed. It felt hollow. He was caught. Yes. But the architect, the woman who owned Aurora Vista Holdings, the one who saw my money as a deposit, was gone. The fallout was immediate and ugly. Within hours. Brightwave Capital issued a press release. They had fired Dylan Hayes, effective immediately. They were fully cooperating with authorities regarding the actions of a single rogue consultant who had violated their ethics. They were already painting him as the sole villain, scrubbing their own hands clean. Worse, the local news blogs picked it up. By evening, the first headlines were out: Seattle son arrested for defrauding elderly mother. And the comments section. The comments were brutal. Not just for Dylan, but for me. What kind of idiot gives her son total control? I feel bad. But she was basically asking for it. This is why you don't trust anyone. I wasn't just a victim. I was a fool. All over again. This time to the entire city. Eric called me the next day. Dylan's first interview didn't go well for him, he said, sounding tired. He's trying to flip. He's blaming Jenna for everything. Says she was the mastermind, that she pressured him. He's still trying to spin the zero balance comment as a joke. He claims he was just aggressively optimizing my finances for my own good. Does he think anyone believes that? I asked, my voice numb. No, Eric said. The audio from the sting, where he lied about you napping, destroys that defense. He'll be formally charged. Eric sent me a file. It was a still frame from the body cam video of Dylan's arrest. He was on his knees, hands cuffed behind his back, his face a mask of disbelief and panic. He wasn't crying because he'd betrayed his mother. He was terrified because his new, shiny toy was being taken away. The case against him is airtight now, Eric assured me. Attempting to re-offend, on tape, while under investigation. That's a gift to a prosecutor. But Lorraine, Jenna is a different problem. She's smart. She knows how to cover her tracks. And that crypto wallet means she has cash that's hard to trace. She's the real target now. The victory felt like ash in my mouth. The media, no longer just local blogs, but now the main Seattle news outlets, had seized the story. The headline was, "Retirement Wiped Clean, Local Son Accused in Zero Balance Fraud." But the story they told was not one of a calculated crime. It was a cautionary tale about a too trusting mother. The public exposure was a different kind of violation, a stripping down of my privacy. My personal failure was now a topic for morning coffee discussions. I felt the stares of my neighbours. I felt the shame all over again, deeper this time. Then came the counterpunch. Dylan's new, high-priced lawyer didn't just deny the charges, he went on the offensive. He filed a petition for an emergency guardianship, claiming I, Lorraine Hayes, was no longer mentally competent to manage my own affairs. The evidence he submitted felt like a physical blow. He claimed my age, my recent erratic behavior which he had caused, and my medical history, the prescription for antidepressants I'd taken for a year after Mark died, proved I was unstable. But the real twist of the knife was a page from my own past, a copy of a private journal I kept in my nightstand. Dylan must have photographed it, long ago, while I was out. In it, from a day I was exhausted and grieving, I had written, "Sometimes I forget if I paid the mortgage already." To the court. His lawyer spun this as proof of cognitive decline, of a woman so confused she couldn't handle her own checkbook. My deepest, most private moment of vulnerability was now Exhibit A in my son's defense. I felt skinned. That was the only word for it. Every layer of protection, my grief, my age, my trust had been peeled back and used as a weapon against me. That night, I truly broke. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the legal papers. I wanted to sign them all. I wanted to give Dylan the guardianship. I wanted to make it all stop. I didn't care about the money anymore. I just wanted the silence back. Carmen found me like that, hunched over the table, at 3 a.m. She didn't say a word. She just went to the hall closet, pulled down the attic ladder, and climbed up. I heard her rummaging for 20 minutes. She came down covered in dust, carrying an old, grey tin box. Marks. "I saw this when I was helping you look for the Christmas decorations," she said, placing it on the table. Inside wasn't just old photos. It was Mark's analogue life. He, too, had been an accountant, but an old-school one. Here were his handwritten financial ledgers from the 90s, detailed, meticulous notes on investments, and taped inside the lid, a single, heavy brass key. Harborline Safe Deposit. I read the small tag. I'd forgotten. After he died, I thought I had consolidated everything. "The ledger," I said, my fingers tracing his neat script. "He mentions corporate bonds and physical stock certificates. He never wanted to digitize them. He always said, 'You can't hack a piece of paper.' Lorraine." The next morning, we were at the old Harbour Line bank building. The vault was in the basement, a relic of brass and steel. I signed the log, the key turned in the lock, and I pulled out the long, metal box. Inside, beneath a yellowed copy of our wedding certificate, were the papers. Thick, embossed stock certificates for companies that were now giants, a sheaf of corporate bonds. This was the money Dylan couldn't find, because it didn't exist on a server. It wasn't just a safety net, it was a fortress. We took photos and sent them to Leo. His reply came an hour later. "Mrs. Hayes, based on current market value, this is a lot. This is more than what they took." This discovery didn't just secure my future. It felt like a message from Mark. It was the validation that my old world caution wasn't a weakness, as Dylan had made me feel, but a strength. I was standing in my kitchen, holding a stock certificate from 1995, when my phone rang. It was Eric Donovan. "Lorraine, I think we found her," he said, his voice flat but energized. "Or at least, we found her shadow. We were running searches on Jenabeth Cole and got a hit on a cold case complaint from 2 years ago. An 80-year-old man in Phoenix, Arizona, different name for the LLC, but the same method, convinced him to give her power of attorney to optimize his tax burden, wiped out his savings. The case went cold because the victim was too ashamed to pursue it, and he died 6 months later. But the file is still open. I looked at the news article on my counter, the one calling me a dazed and confused old woman. I thought of that poor man in Arizona, dying in shame. The humiliation that had almost crushed me turned into a new kind of fuel, a cold, purposeful fury. I wasn't alone. And if the world was going to put a spotlight on me, if they wanted to see the foolish old woman, then I would stand in that light. And I would make sure they all saw exactly what Jenabeth Cole and my son had done. I would be the last victim she ever made. Eric Donovan flew to Phoenix 2 days later. He didn't just find the family of the man Jenna had defrauded. He found a daughter still cleaning out her father's house, a house lost to foreclosure because of the theft. She and her brother were angry, but they were also buried in the same profound shame I had felt. They didn't want the world to know their sharp, successful father had been played for a fool. "My father was a judge," the daughter told Eric, her voice tight. "And she made him. He died believing he was an idiot." Eric, seeing the wall of shame, made a decision. He called me, and with Monica's permission, he put me on speakerphone. I told that woman my story. I told her about the zero balance joke. I told her about the public humiliation, the news articles, the guardianship hearing where my own son used my grief against me. There was a long silence on the line. "That," the daughter said, her voice turning from shame to steel, "is exactly what she did to us." They agreed to testify. They agreed to fly to Seattle. And they brought a gift, their father's old case file. In it, among the bank statements, was a copy of an email from Jenabeth Cole. Monica laid it side by side with the emails she'd sent me. The phrasing was nearly identical. "It's just optimizing what will be inheritance anyway. This is just a way to make your money work faster." She wasn't just a thief. She was a predator with a script. While Eric was securing the past, Leo was chasing the present. He and Eric's tech team had been watching the blockchain, analyzing the crypto wallet Jenna had fled with. "She's arrogant," Leo told me over the phone. "She's moving small amounts, testing. She thinks she's a ghost." But she wasn't. She had made one mistake, months ago. She had linked her hardware wallet, just once, to a major crypto exchange to buy the initial seed coins. That exchange required a KYC Know Your Customer profile. To open it, she had uploaded a scan of her passport. That was all Eric needed. The passport scan, combined with the new evidence from Arizona, was enough for a federal warrant. They tracked her digital footprint. She wasn't in Florida. She was in a luxury high-rise in Marina del Rey, California, living under the name Jessica Pine. The U.S. Marshals didn't storm the door. They waited. They arrested her in the lobby of a brokerage firm, where she was attempting to liquidate $50,000 in crypto in an over-the-counter trade. She was, quite literally, caught with the bag. Her interrogation was a masterwork of deflection. I read the transcript, just as she'd planned. She threw Dylan under the bus. She painted herself as a terrified victim of coercive financial control. She claimed Dylan was obsessed with me, that he forced her to sign the LLC papers, that she was just a pawn in his sick, psychological war against his mother. It was a compelling, tearful performance. It might have even worked if they hadn't seized her phone. In a password-protected notes app, they found her real thoughts, spreadsheets, timelines, lists of other potential targets she'd scouted, and a very specific breakdown of how the Aurora Vista funds would be divided, with J getting 70% and D getting 30%. Monica and Eric laid it all out for me in Monica's office. "It's over. Lorraine," Monica said, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "This isn't just your son being a greedy fool anymore. This is a multi-state, organized conspiracy to defraud the elderly. The charges are federal. They are both going down." The guardianship petition against me was dismissed with prejudice. The public narrative, fueled by the new arrests, shifted from foolish mother to mastermind victim. I was asked to be the prosecution's star witness. The weeks before the trial were spent not in fear, but in preparation. Monica drilled me, acting as the defense attorney. "They will call you forgetful, Mrs. Hayes. Is it true you kept a journal saying you forgot to pay your mortgage?" "That was during a period of acute grief," I replied, my voice steady, just as we'd practiced. "My accounting, however, has always been perfect." Then, 3 days before the trial was scheduled to begin, a letter arrived. It wasn't from a lawyer. It was from the county jail. It was handwritten on thin notebook paper. It was from Dylan. He begged me to come see him. "Mom, please, I need you." He wrote that Jenna had been the one. She had poisoned him against me, that he was so scared and so sorry. He promised, "If you just come, just you and me, no lawyers, I will tell you everything. I will give you what you need to lock her up forever. Please, Mum, just help me. Tell the judge I'm not a monster." I held the flimsy paper, his familiar, looping handwriting a blur. My heart, the stupid, traitorous muscle, ached. The primal desire to believe my child, to save him, was a physical pull. But the woman he had turned me into the cold, meticulous accountant knew a bad deal when she saw one. This was just another transaction. He was offering me Jenna in exchange for his own freedom. The battle inside me was brief, but violent. "I'll go," I told Monica. Her head snapped up. "Lorraine, that is a terrible idea." "I'll go," I repeated. "I will go to that jail. I will sit in that visitation room, and I will pick up that phone. I will listen to every last word he has to say." I looked at her. The steel in my spine absolute. "And I will not promise him a single thing." The visitation room was a sterile, pale green, smelling of bleach and despair. We sat separated by thick, scratched plexiglass, the phone receivers cold in our hands. He looked terrible, pale, unshaven, his eyes wide with a frantic, animal fear. He was my son, and I felt nothing but a cold, assessing distance. He confessed everything, just as he'd promised. The words tumbled out how the advance inheritance started as a dark joke, how Jenna turned it into a business plan, how she meticulously researched LLCs and crypto wallets, how he was the one who suggested the zero balance line because he thought it was funny. She's the one who wanted to do the guardianship. "Mom," he whispered, his voice cracking. "She said you were getting old, that you'd thank us later. I never wanted. I just wanted us to be secure." "Secure?" I repeated, the word tasting like poison. "If you just tell the judge I was manipulated, that I'm not her. Tell them I'll pay it all back. Mom, please. Don't let them put me in prison. You're my mother." I looked at him, really looked at him. The boy I'd raised was gone. This was a weak, terrified man who was trying to make one last, desperate trade. "You're asking me to save you from a zero balance in court. Dylan," I said, my voice as cold and flat as the glass between us. "I think you're confusing me with someone who still trusts you." I watched his face crumble as I stood up, put the receiver back on the hook, and walked away. The trial was a spectacle. The courtroom was standing room only, and the prosecution, with the full weight of the state and federal government behind them, was flawless. They played the audio. My voice, in the courtroom, was small, but his voice was loud. "Mom, how would you look with zero balance?" The laughter he and Jenna shared echoed in the dead silent room. I gripped the bench, my knuckles white. The witness from Arizona was devastating. She described Jenna's script word for word. Leo's testimony on the data trail was unshakable, and Dylan's lawyer he tried to sell the manipulated son defense. But the prosecutor just played the second audio file, the sting operation. The jury heard my son, cool and confident, lying to a federal agent that his mother was napping. When I took the stand, I wasn't a victim. I was an accountant. I didn't cry. I calmly detailed the two versions of my son, the boy who brought me home A+ report cards, and the man at the defense table who had calculated my life's worth and decided to cash it in early. "I wasn't there for revenge," I said, my voice carrying to the back wall. "I was there so that I, and every other person like me, would never be laughed at again." The prosecutor used Dylan's own words in his closing. He turned to the jury. He asked his wife what his mother would look like with zero balance. "We, the state, now ask you, the jury, who truly deserves to be left with nothing?" The verdict came back in under 3 hours. Jenna, as the mastermind with a multi-state pattern, received the heaviest possible sentence. She would be an old woman by the time she saw the outside world. Dylan's was lighter, but it was still prison. It was a long time, long enough to lose everything. But the final entry on the balance sheet was mine. As the primary creditor, Monica filed a motion. Dylan's shares and options in Brightwave Capital, his reward for his consulting, were forfeit. The court transferred them to me as partial restitution and, as my final act of motherly concern, I signed the documents opposing any future request for parole. I walked out of the courthouse onto the front steps. Carmen and Leo were waiting for me. I pulled out my phone. The bank app was no longer at zero. Between the court-ordered restitution and the bonds Mark had left me, the numbers were healthy. I scrolled to my contacts, to the entry, Dylan, son. I pressed delete. I turned to Carmen, the Seattle air feeling cleaner, colder. "Well?" I said, allowing myself a small, tired smile. "I guess I finally know what I look like with zero balance." I tapped my chest. "In here. Anyway." I stepped off the curb, leaving the noise of the cameras behind, and began the work of balancing the books on the rest of my life. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're listening from, so please drop a comment below and share your thoughts. Make sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, give this video a like, and if you can, please hit that hype button so more people can hear this story.